Good afternoon. My name is Dave Stargel with the Complex Sale. I'd like to welcome you to our April webinar, Deal Coaching, the Top 12 Strategy Mistakes That Will Cost You Revenue. I have a very, very relevant topic for you today. This is something that we're discussing almost daily with sales leaders. Rick, myself, our senior principals, this topic is coming up all the time recently. In fact, I had a call this morning and 2 client meetings yesterday where this was the very specific topic of how to get our sales managers more effective and more consistent at coaching in the process. So we've got about a 45 to an hour session for you. We'll keep it to that, but I think you'll get a lot of information and a lot of value out of this. At the end, just as a reminder, there will be a very, very short survey. We'd appreciate it if you would fill that out. We're looking for some feedback on this webinar as well as suggestions for topics for upcoming webinars. So at this point, I'd like to introduce our host and my coach and mentor for many years in the art of selling, Rick Page.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it, and thanks everybody for joining in with us. I'm going to keep it fast moving. I'm going to try to have you drinking from a fire hose and cover as much ground as we can in a short period of time, and we'll stop right on the hour. So, all right, Dave, put the first one up. So, in talking about mistakes that salespeople make, first of all, this is results from CSO Insights survey. Jim Dickey does the benchmarking for the sales industry, surveys about 2,000 clients several times a year, and publishes the results. And if you're not using them, you really should. So anyway, out of his last survey, this was a stunning statistic. And that is that of forecasted opportunities, competitive evaluations, less than half of them actually close. That's an awful performance for a business process. It's probably maybe one of the worst ones ever. If airlines worked like this, we'd start the month with 40,000 airplane flights, and we'd end up with 1. They'd lose your luggage. We found out that about a fourth of them go to no decision, and about 30% of them go to losses. Now, these are forecasted deals, either at 50, 70, or 90, if that's the process you use, or commit type deals, and they get lost. So that's very expensive. I mean, if you could cut your loss rate down 5 to 10% and your stall rate 5%, that's a huge amount of money. But forecasting won't do it. Forecasting is actually looking in the rearview mirror. By the time it comes up on the forecast, you're already in trouble or you're already winning and it's too late to do anything about it. We're going to talk about working with reps to prevent mistakes and having in the first place and get their strategy right while there's still time to do something about it. Okay? So there's a couple of approaches we see sales managers using. And, we've seen people that are the best performers, they get promoted to sales manager. And what made them a good salesperson doesn't necessarily make them a good sales manager. And that could be that they used to be personality-based salespeople. And when you get to be a manager, sometimes they continue that, and their approach is just hire strong hunters, aim them out there, cheerlead, get the motivation up, flog the forecast, and then that usually results in turnover. And the cost of a bad hire or turnover is about 1 to 2 times quota. This is not an effective way to run a sales force, but it's the way a lot of people basically do it. I have one sales manager say, I just hire 6-figure gunslingers and aim them. And that's not as effective in today's market. If you want to get the most out of your sales force, a better model is to do this. First of all, build a hiring profile that contains the competencies that they need to be successful. Those competencies need to be based either on your best performers or on your selling cycle, which is based on the customer's buying cycle. So if you work backwards from the customer's buying cycle, you'll end up with the competencies and skills and behaviors that they need coming in the door. That can be as much as 50% of your success is hiring the right people. We tend to hire on hope, however, and personality in the resume, and that's full of danger. Next, you need sales process. And the biggest mistake we see with sales managers is they think they need one training program. There's about 65 competencies that salespeople have in a complex sale. We defined 65 of them. And you're not going to get them all from one training program. You need about 5 or 6 skills programs. You need an opportunity management process. You need an account management process. And you need a forecasting and a sales management process and a hiring process. So just saying we got this training program is probably, David summed it up yesterday, said, would you play golf with one club? I mean, it's that crazy. Next, you need coaching and more importantly, coaching discipline. Things that are setting aside time, sales reps know they're going to go through this process and doing things consistently. That's what makes one sales organization more effective than another. And that'll result in full performance. And CSO Insight says organizations that are good at coaching and have coaching discipline can get 10 to 15% better win rates than those that don't. That's a huge delta in your sales results. Not only that, it'll cut your sales turnover down because sales reps don't leave because they're winning more, making more money. That's the other side effect to helping these sales reps not make these mistakes. Okay, this is the model we use in my book, Hope is Not a Strategy. It's actually the client's buying model for competitive evaluations. I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail in this, but there's a few things we need to remember about it while we're looking for these mistakes that salespeople make. They invite 5 or 6 vendors in. There's maybe an RFP, and it looks great, and all of a sudden we hit what's called the Crucible. And that's when we start hitting out of control signals. I'm going to pop it up so we see the red one. Right there. We start getting out of control signals about in the middle. And one of the things you need to understand is in these types of evaluations, if you're not winning, they don't tell you. There's reasons the client won't tell you. They want to keep you in the deal. They may not know you're losing. They don't understand the political decision-making process themselves. They're trying to not hurt your feelings. So the veterans sales managers start picking up out-of-control signals. And things like they're not calling you back. I'll go into that in a little bit. But we find out we're out of control, and it comes from 5 different reasons. The buyers don't reach a consensus. They never agreed on what their requirements were in the first place. That's the flaw in consultative selling right now, is that an RFP looks like, or set of requirements looks like they agree on what they want. They really don't. And when they hit the Crucible, they can't get it all from one vendor. Power struggles break out. That's where we see multi-million-dollar deals that you work on for a year lost in a day. And the issues will change at this point in the sale. Deals stall out. If a good competitor's in there, they're going to counterattack with a price cut or some political strategy. New players come in. So this is really a hard thing to manage. So keep these things in mind. Bad news early is good news. The best reps ask the best questions early in the sales cycle. And if you get bad news and this is not a good deal for you, you can either qualify out or change your strategy. But the worst outcome in all of selling is just like poker, like we see on TV. And that is finishing second late. That's the worst outcome. You spend all your resources and all your time, and finishing second pays 0. So keep this in mind too. The philosophy here is that the closer you get to winning, the closer you also get to losing. So David, hit the next one. Because as you get to the Crucible, you may have done 50 or 70% of the activities needed to win the sale. And some methodologies say, poof, a miracle happens, then you win. Those methodologies ignore competition in politics, which is where you lose half your pipeline. And so the closer you get to winning, the closer you also get to losing because of this emotional, political activity that happens in this part of the sale. So how do you get your reps to get through this and win their deals and get into the battles that they can win, right? So here's mistake number 1. We're going to get about a dozen mistakes salespeople make. And of course, there's also a corollary to this, and that is one webinar we do is the 12 questions that sales managers need to ask to find out and prevent these mistakes. So that's another webinar for another time. A lot of salespeople don't know what the strategic pains are and how their solution will link up into it. They can't link their solution up to the organization strategy of what they're selling into. Those that can really get a lot of power and access to powerful people and avoid commoditization. But that's a matter of research and asking people and doing a great job of discovery so that you'll understand. If you're a unique, differentiated solution to a strategic pain, wow, that's what you live for. You shouldn't discount that deal. That has a high chance of closing and closing high, right? I'll go back a little bit. Most people don't know the client's decision-making process, and that's quite often because the client doesn't know it themselves. One of my clients said they don't know how to decide until they can't decide. And that's where those power struggles break out. But if you can understand that the decision-making process is either two-tiered or algebraic democracy or straw vote, then you'll know whose vote you got to have and whose vote, who's a recommender, and maybe whose vote you don't need. Also, a blind spot they have is the client's needs change during these sales cycles, and the issues will change. And if a good salesperson in there, they can change them to their advantage. And so you have to be alert for competitors doing that. Things that weren't important in the RFP suddenly are important. Well, where did that come from? And one of the most common mistakes salespeople make is that they misread preference with the people they're dealing with the client. Because they're nice to them, they think they must like them. Well, a good veteran sales manager can help you figure out who's really helping you and who's just being nice to you. Because the people that are against you are not going to be mean to you. They're not going to wear the competitor's T-shirts to the presentation. But the question is, what are they doing to help you win, and what's their real preference for you? Okay. Probably the most common mistake we hear from sales managers is selling too low or selling to the wrong people. That's a common trait because salespeople, especially in account management, we talk about opportunity management, especially in account management, salespeople tend to get in their comfort zone selling to the people that are already sold. And not to the people in the power zone who can get things done for you and get the team to go along for you and recommend you and then kick it across the CFO's desk to get it approved. So there are people out there. One of the principles we have is that not all the buyers are equal. And that's kind of an interesting thing. We're equal in the eyes of the law and the Lord, but not when it comes to buying things. And some salespeople try to sell to everybody alike. There's some people out there that will eat up a lot of your time, and they have very little influence on choice of a vendor. You don't have time to, and you can't afford to, and you don't need to sell to everybody on the committee with the same amount of time. What you really got to do is you got 168 hours, and you got to figure out who you're going to spend your time with, whose votes you got to have, and get those people on your side early. During the discovery process, it's 10 times easier to help somebody make up their mind than it is to change it after they've made it up. It takes 10 times as much effort to change it. And so if you can identify the key players, decision makers early, and get them leaning your way and helping you, and the higher you can get, the more it's like having a GPS up in the sky. You can get the powerful people at the top to tell you who to call and what to say, where you stand, how to win. Then you have a really good chance of winning the deal. But spending time with the wrong people and selling too low is probably one of the biggest ones we hear, right? Right? So another mistake that is missing from a lot of methodologies and a lot of sales strategies is a political strategy. And if each one of the buyers on the committee or involved in it has a different amount of power and plays a different part. Some are recommenders, some are gatekeepers, some are influencers, some are non-participants, some are potential influencers, some are blockers. You really need to understand at a granular individual level what are the key votes we need and how do we win each vote or live without it. You may not need all the votes, depending on the decision-making process. And then who are the powerful people? What's their preference for us? Who prefers a competitor? And what's our plan to either win their vote or live without it? Now, another thing we've observed in the last couple of years is based on people's personality styles and the strength of their preference for you, some people who are for you may fold their cards on you in the Crucible. They sense the wind shifting the other way, somebody powerful influences them, and they have preference for you, but they're not the kind of personality that's going to stand up and fight for you in this. Because they're going to meet in a conference room in the Crucible, and you won't be there. And you need to have the strongest sponsors riding on the biggest business solutions in order to prevail in those meetings. And if you don't, your deal's going to stall out or you're going to lose, right? So here's probably the most effective tool in all of selling. And you can do this on a cocktail napkin. We have software that does it, but it basically brings together all the pieces that you need in our methodology anyway. Pain, power, preference, what's their part, and what's our plan to win their vote or live without it. But you really need to do a stakeholder analysis. And any sales rep that says they're too busy to do this is full of it. You need to be a leader if you're a sales manager and say, if you don't have time enough to spend 15 minutes doing this, why is it worth 15 hours of our time to go across the country and be unprofessional? And if they don't have this kind of information, those are salespeople that are watching it happen and wondering what happened rather than making it happen. This one tool will help them do that. And most salespeople don't have nearly this kind of information on these committee decisions. All right, let's give you an example here. So let's take Smith. Smith has we use a +5, -5 scale for power, +50, -50 scale for preference. And we have some codes here for the parts they're going to play. Now, Smith likes us a lot, got a lot of power. He's a decision maker and a power sponsor. We're going to support Smith. We're probably going to enlist Smith to help us sell some other people. And he's got to be able to give us information as well. All right? So Smith's on our side. Wilson's -50, but there's another thing. Wilson's -5 in power. Wilson doesn't like us, but who cares? Nobody likes Wilson. The question is, how can people have minus power? There are people who are disregarded or disrespected in their own organizations. They've got personality issues. They've got ethical issues, performance issues, haven't made a right decision, close to retirement, out of date, misaligned with the culture. You don't want to alienate anybody, and you want to be professional, but you wouldn't spend a lot of time on this stakeholder. Now, if we looked at this deal today, we got a problem. Right? Down here, Millen and Turner, who are involved, they're decision makers, have power, and don't like us. Millen's too far gone. Beating our head against the door there is probably a wasted effort. So Turner might be our swing vote if we could make a call on them and find out what their issues are, if they have any misperceptions, if they understand our solution, what it can do for them, or if we can build a relationship with them to increase their preference for us. That may be a swing vote there. Or we may want to bring in a couple of other people that Pierce and McCune did not involve. They have power and they have preference, but they don't understand what this evaluation has to do with them. So we have to go in and say, here's what this means to you. Can you add yourself to the committee? I've had people fly across the country and walk into committee meetings at our request, uninvited and unannounced, to turn deals around. And that's when you count the heads. You say, I don't have the votes and I need some help. So maybe we can get these people in on our side, because right now, if they decided today, this deal's not ours. And I bet you it's probably a 90 on the forecast. So, all right. So some people don't have a good competitive strategy. There's some people that, like in consulting, that aren't natural. They're more collaborative, more congenial, more consultative. But you really do need a competitive strategy to anticipate what your competition's going to do to win, find out who's helping them, what do they say about us, how do we anticipate, predict, and neutralize their efforts. So we need to focus our strengths on their weaknesses. Now, if they're entrenched and they got powerful people who already like them, you need to ask yourself, why am I in this deal? Our chances are very slow. And we think about 25% of these deals are over before they start. They have to do due diligence. They have to look at 3 vendors, but they already know a lot of whom they want to buy from. And in sales to government, it's even higher than that. The RFP in the government is at the end of the sales cycle, not at the beginning. So here we need to differentiate ourselves in a professional manner and demonstrate how we solve more strategic problems better. And so we also need to anticipate what our competitor is going to try to do to defeat us. And most of the good companies we know that have strong hunting sales forces know their competitors' solutions just about as well as they know their own. And when the time is right, they can really differentiate them in a professional manner, right? So keep in mind, if you're a competitor, if you're in a poker game, you don't know who the patsy is, it's probably you, right? So there's a lot of times when you're column B and column C and you just don't know it. If you can pick up out of control signals in time enough, there's time enough to change some strategies. But since they won't tell you that you're not winning, they have political reasons why they won't do that. They want you to stay in the game, or they don't know. But the veterans start to pick up what they don't say and the little signals that tell us this may not be our deal. The bad news early is good news. We still have some time. Obviously, the number one thing everybody says is they're not returning phone calls. And when they do, it's cold and formal and there's kind of a chill in there, not giving you information. Another is cancel meetings, maybe the meeting with a competitor. Here's one, new requirement comes up late. Where'd that come from? They just get smart late? I don't think so. I think the competitor. And the rookie, the new salesperson, thinks, okay, we'll go back and be responsive to the customer, crank out that 20-page response, not realizing we're probably giving them the bullets with which to shoot us. Of course, you want to sit at FedEx overnight so you can get eliminated even faster, greater expense. We've all done that, right? So, another thing is when it's stalling out or slippage, or they have no more questions. If you've done your demo, if you've done your presentation, if you've done your discovery and proposal, and they're not asking you questions about how we're going to do business, terms and conditions, support issues, post-sales issues, they're either not talking to anybody, they're not talking to you. That's not a good sign. You're listening to what they're not saying. It's time for them to be asking how we're going to make this work, or beating you down on price. If they're not talking to you about that, that's a bad out of control signal. And then if you can't get access to the right people, that's because they don't think they're going to be working with you in the future. Now, you know, the veterans can spot these a little easier than the newer salespeople. The earlier you find out about them, the better chance you have of turning a deal around. Okay? So salespeople have all been trained on positive mental attitude, and that comes from Clement Stone and Napoleon Hill and Zig Ziglar, and that's very important to salespeople because we have to have a positive mental attitude, or we start the day with a blank piece of paper and have to turn out an annual quota, and we get a lot of obstacles and rejections and things like that. So salespeople are always thinking about, you know, the possibilities, but the sales manager really needs to start asking the critical thinking questions and challenging some of the assumptions and getting to think about what could go wrong, how to anticipate it, and seal off things that might go wrong before they actually happen. So there's a balance here of having a positive attitude and yet asking the tough questions so that you don't get the bad news late at the end. And a lot of salespeople think because the customers are talking to them or polite to them that they prefer them. They're two different things. And if nobody is telling you that you're winning and giving you inside information, you're probably not winning. So those are the things that you look for, and there's a balance there. That's why these strategy sessions are so important between a sales manager and a rep, is that's the time that you can ask the tough questions and go find out things in time enough and get the bad news early, or get the good news that confirms you're on the right track. Right? Another thing we see is, you know, we think team selling is a leadership job. Salespeople usually have to work with 4 or 5 other people inside the company, the manager, the technical people, proposal writers, support people. And those people quite often don't know what's happening inside the account because it's in the rep's head. And, you know, if you want to be a soloist, you might be able to play an instrument that way, but if you want to lead an orchestra or a band, you're going to have to write some things down. And salespeople don't like to write. They would rather tell about a deal 6 times than write it down once, and that's their nature. So if you want to lead, you need at least a strategy session and a process to lead your team so that everybody knows what their role is, what their action items are, when they're due, who they're assigned to, so that they don't end up just telling the story or wandering through the deal without a plan. And everybody that touches your account should know the politics, the history, the competition's position in there, and salespeople really need to look at these jobs as a leadership job and leading a team, and that's why you need to take some time and prepare the team. Now, number one problem that product specialists and sales engineers complain about is nobody told me who the players were, what the issues were. We didn't take time to do a good discovery or analysis, and yet you want a customized presentation, you know, built on the way in from the airport. So that's their number one mistake. Now, also, let's talk about leadership of the sales reps. One of the biggest problems we see are sales managers who, at the first pushback from the reps of taking the time to plan their sales strategy, say, oh, my people don't want to write anything. Okay, you got to decide whether you want to be a boss or a buddy. You got to decide whether you're going to do what it takes to win or what they just like to do. And so you got to decide whether you want to be, you know, to lead or to be loved, because they're going to push back. Oh, I don't have time. Don't need to do that. I got it all under control. And if you don't drill down in there, then by the time you find out, it's too late. So start with what it takes to win, and then not what the salespeople would like to do. And you got to create sales discipline for coaching so that you can lead the salespeople who are leading the teams. All right. So we also see that sometimes tactics just don't match up to the strategy. Either they haven't decided on a strategy or have an unclear objective what they want to do in the account, and they're doing things in react mode or randomly or because somebody asked, when in fact that's not really going to contribute to a victory. And so we don't get paid to be busy. We get paid to be effective. And without a defined strategy, we end up selling the wrong things to the wrong people in the wrong accounts. Or say we have somebody we know that we got to win their vote. We use a DISC profile to identify 4 different personality styles, and we work with our clients now. This is a new program of ours, and people are loving it, because one mistake we see at a tactical level is approaching people with the wrong tactics based on their personality. There's people who want to go fast, there's people who want to go slow. There's people who are left-brained, task-oriented, people who are relationship-oriented. And if you take a relationship-oriented person and you go into the flow charts and the project plan, you're going to bore them silly. Likewise, if they're analytical people that really want to know how it works, and your idea is to take them to lunch and be their best friend, that ain't going to work either. So matching your sales style not only to the account but to the individual personality style really results in better bonding, better alignment, better relationships. And if you want to build preference, you do it one of 2 ways. You either solve the business problem or you build a relationship. And so doing tactics that don't match the strategy end up not only not advancing your plan, but actually sometimes setting it back. Right? And it takes about 15 to 30 minutes to straighten that out. So never confuse motion with action. It really needs to be part of a plan. All right, poor qualification. Everybody has 168 hours to work with. You got the same number of hours Einstein had, and that's the number of hours in a week. And a lot of these deals are already over before they start. I mean, they know who they want to buy from because of Sarbanes-Oxley or procurement requirements. They have to look at multiple vendors. And you need to find that out. Is it a level playing field? And unsolicited RFPs, the batting average is very low because if you didn't apply them, we all know somebody else probably did. And if you can't get access to find out if you got a good solution fit and a good culture fit, your chance, I mean, time would have been better spent shoving brochures on the windshield wipers and answering some of these things, working on some of these deals. One of the questions y'all said, we asked you what your biggest concern was as you signed up. And a lot of people said finding the time to coach. Well, here's a good place. Because think of all the hours that your reps and you have spent working on deals that you finished second. And if you look back on it, you should have gotten them in the first place. That's where you get the time to do coaching. And that helps you get in control earlier, and because second place pays zero. And the other place we see sales managers not finding the time to coach is spending too much time with C-level players when they should be working their Bs to turn them into As. Some of the C-level players are C-level players because they don't have the competencies to sell in your sales area, and they never will. So you got to get them out and replace them with B players or A players, people that you can grow and develop. And every coaching session with a manager and a sales rep is a great teaching opportunity as well. So how you qualify depends on a couple of factors, and it's different for each rep in each company because it's your chances of winning versus the resources it's going to take to buy the next card versus what else you've got to work on in your pipeline or territory. The trouble is there's a fine line between qualifying and quitting. But if you have a identified criteria for qualifying in or out and proceeding, then it takes that emotional quitting idea out of it, and you just chose to qualify out and work on a deal that you have a better chance of winning on. So what you want to do also in account management is segment your accounts in your territory. Partnering isn't for everybody. Business partnering is a great concept. You build company trust at all levels, and you get first rights of refusal and sole source business and preferred vendor status and things like that. But not every client is a candidate for it. And if you try to partner with a commodity buyer, you just partner yourself broke, and you'll end up wasting a lot of time because they're going to put you out for bids and drive the price down anyway. So you want to segment your accounts, identify a couple in your territory that you can partner with and build an annuity out of, and then you got to harvest your corn and make your quarterly numbers with everybody else. So as I mentioned, the worst outcome is finishing second and finishing second late. Now, a lot of times salespeople in hindsight when they lose say, oh, we lost on price or we lost on product. Well, no, you didn't. You got outsold. And the reason is you should have found out about price and product fit early in the sale and either qualified in or qualified out. But if a salesperson's got a weak pipeline, they would rather work on a bad deal than to go. They would rather work on a bad prospect than to go prospect. Because nobody likes to go pick up the phone and call a stranger. So let's work on a bad deal and waste our time, finish second, and you can see the futility of that. So this is very important. Pick the battles you can win. Right? Okay, so this is the biggest one. We see the companies that do this well are much more successful, 10 to 15% better hit rates, and that is no deal coaching or strategy reviews. Some managers don't think it's a job. Some are too busy. We already talked about why they're too busy. They're too busy propping up weak salespeople, rescuing the deals, and by the time you rescue 4 a month, you're no longer a manager. You're a sales rep with a gun bearer. And the reason you're too busy is you're working on deals that are already out of control rather than coaching deals before they get out of control. So the key to this is discipline and consistency. Some people set up every Monday for deal coaching, every Monday afternoon for deal coaching. And they cycle their reps through, and so a rep will know that once or twice a month they're going to be going over their deals. Or Any deal that's over a certain size or a certain point in the forecast is going to get coached every week or every month. You don't need to do this with every deal, obviously. Some of them are easy, some of them are upgrades, some of them are non-competitive, but the ones that are really tough, this has tremendous impact on not only your win rate, but your turnover. Now, sometimes the reps ramble through the story with no process. If you do this effectively, it may only take 5 minutes. Usually it takes about 30 minutes. In some cases, we spend a half a day on a big prospect. But you have to do what it takes to win the deal and get the right strategy. And if the manager is too passive, that's not very helpful. If they're too judgmental, the reps hate that. Oh, you got all the answers in 6 minutes, and I've been working this for 6 months. So you really want the reps to own the deal and grow the deal while you grow the rep. Leave the ownership of the deal with the rep. And for heaven's sakes, don't steal the deal in front of the customer. If you take it over and shove them aside, then that monkey jumps onto your back and you're now the rep. And you've disempowered your salesperson. So a lot of you ask about improving your forecast. Well, the best thing you can do is, sometimes account reviews just consist of how much you win, and that's not very helpful to the rep or your strategy. And if you do forecasting like that without a strategy analysis, then you're just going to add up bad numbers faster. And that's why 50% of the forecasted deals don't close. There hasn't been an analysis of it in a coaching session, and you'll need about 2 or 3 of them, because by the time you win, you may be on plan B, C, D, or E, because you consciously decided to change your plan and do it a different way based on the situation, right? So Bill Curry, who was coach of, I think he coached at Tech, he coached at Alabama, and he coached at Green Bay. And he played for Green Bay. So he says there are 2 kinds of pain: pain of discipline or the pain of regret. So the choice is yours. So what do good coaches do? And these are, you got John Wooden over here, and you got Bill Walsh, and you got Butch Harmon, I think, who coached Tiger and coaches Mickelson now. So first of all, independent observation, an outside opinion on things. You get a little too close to the trees, you misread some things. They work on correct technique or process. You go to a golf tournament, and the world's best golfers are out there at the practice range, and standing in front of them is a coach getting $5,000 to $10,000 a day. Why would the world's best golfers use a coach? You need somebody to observe from outside your body or outside your involvement to help you figure out what you're doing right, and then explain it to you in a way that you can correct it from the inside out. All right? And the best coaches are not always the best players. They understand the process and the analysis better. They can help you improve your strategy. They can provide the discipline to do this. They help grow the student. Now, what's the Hawthorne effect? If you have a business degree, it's one of the first things you study. Back in the 30s, GE did a study of scientific management at the Hawthorne plant of Western Electric in Chicago. And the idea was, if we increase the lighting, will that increase production? Because they want to sell light bulbs. Well, they increased the lighting and production went up. And being scientists, they said we also need a control group. So they tested it again with lower lighting. Production went up. And when they didn't change the lighting, production went up. And I said, what did we learn from this? And that is this, that it was the watching of the people rather than the lighting that was making the big difference. People being watched, people being observed, somebody's measuring us, and it has an uplifting effect knowing that your manager is going to be asking you about that deal while it's still time to save it. Sometimes they just get a little tired of the encouragement, and obviously you've got to ask the tough questions. Eventually your reps will start asking them of themselves, and the consistency with which you do this is the key to competitive advantage. That's where organizations start outperforming another one, right? Finally, in this economy, we're finding out there's an approval crucible as well. And sometimes it takes as long to get the process approved as it does to get chosen as a vendor. Procurement got a lot more power around 2000 in the last recession, and they haven't lost it. And in this recession, companies have actually saved their way to prosperity, and they've strengthened procurement even more. And sometimes in the negotiating process, they're better at buying than salespeople are at selling, because they pretend that they don't understand your differentiators and your value. They all look alike to me. You're more expensive. What are you going to do for us? And if you go into that without a way of documenting your value and your differentiators and attaching that to strategic, powerful people and issues, you're going to end up battle wits unarmed, and they're good at it now. You also need to have your sponsor help you. Along the way, when they ask you for things, you need to say, somebody's going to have to help us get this through procurement, and explain to them the risk and the value and why we're worth the premium if you're not the low bidder. So what happens, too, is that a whole bunch of new people come in. You get people from procurement, you get people from IT, you get people from legal, you get other executives that get involved, you get finance sometimes if it's going to have to be spread out in cost. And you need to go back and do another stakeholder analysis on these new people, because they want different things. And it's not product functionality. They're looking for different things from you. And you need to get a stakeholder analysis and figure out how you're going to satisfy each one of these. And you got to have a power sponsor to help kick it across the CFO's desk. A higher ROI won't close a deal in this economy. Every CFO is out there looking at a dozen deals, all with good ROIs, and salespeople go back and won't close, so they sharpen their pencil. That's not going to do it. Your solution has to have a political pain or gain for a powerful person who's going to push it across the CFO's desk, because your competition at this point are other projects they could invest in. And the CFO is going to ask your sponsor, why should we invest in this now? Well, they better have an answer. So, right? Another flaw in strategy, and this is the last one, 12, is no plan B. By the time you actually win, or by the time a battle is won, if you study history, we want plan B, C, D, or E. And the people that win are the ones that have a conscious way of assessing the situation, figuring out the issues or the people or the criteria or the process has changed, and coming up and revising your strategy for the next few calls or meetings with the customer. Now, that's not wobbling all around and being uncommitted, but it is a conscientious effort to analyze it and purposely come up with a new plan. I can tell you deal after deal that we've won where we figured out if it's not me, it's time for plan B. We've either gotten new players involved, we've changed the issues, our competitor thought they were winning, so they just went straight ahead, and we were able to turn the deal around. We've heard it in class dozens of times with other salespeople as well. So you want to have at all time plan B and maybe plan C, because you may have to change to plan B in the middle of the sales call. If you try a strategy and it doesn't work, you don't have time to have a huddle. You got to know, okay, if that didn't work, then we're going to try this, and have that decided ahead of time. And that's the key. Flexibility and agility like that is the key to good strategy and good execution. But right? Now, out of this, what are you going to do Monday at 8:30 to win this deal? Out of this type of analysis and out of your session, you need to come out with 4 different parts of a strategy. First of all, solution strategy. Most sales organizations focus on this. What's their problem? We do discovery, we present a solution, we calculate an ROI, and we talk about the benefits, and maybe some differentiators. Most sales organizations focus on this pretty well. What is maybe missing is the competitive strategy. Why us, and to whom does that matter? That's differentiation. Solution strategy is going to be value and urgency. Why are they going to buy? Why are they going to buy now? Competitive strategy is why would they buy from us, and who matters in the decision? Who's actually going to pick a vendor out of the people in the committee? And then finally, down to political, who decides, how do we build preference for them? Do we either build a relationship with them, or show them how we solve their strategic problem. And finally, you need a closing strategy. How much is a deal going to be? What's the closing process, the approval process? Who's going to be involved? What do they want? And then what's next to get this deal kicked across the line? These deals don't coast across the line anymore. They got to be kicked across the line. It's just too complicated. And if you're too slow at doing it, they can fall out. So you do this. Out of this comes action items, of course, that you go execute, and then you get results and new information. And keep this in mind. Any strategy is a loop. You don't pick one and just take it from the start. That's the way you fire a scud. It's guided. It's not guided. It's aimed one time and it hits and miss. You need to be more like a laser-guided bomb, in that as you go down, you're adjusting all the time, and you only need one of those bombs instead of 50 of the others. So good salespeople are always revising these 4 strategies ahead of the competition. Right? Keep them reacting to you instead of you reacting to them. Okay, some people ask about forecasting, and there's a couple new things to do this with. First of all, the stakeholder analysis that we showed is part of what we call an opportunity plan, but it also includes your solution plan, preference power, what part they're going to play, qualification criteria, the politics, competition strategy, whatnot. That's your opportunity plan. And some organizations just say, okay, forecast at 50, 70, 90. The trouble is this. You don't get 50, 70, or 90%. You either get it or you don't. It's binary outcome. And second, you usually play 0. We built a process called Sales Profit, and it's 12 questions that sales managers ought to ask about a deal, that the best ones have asked for years. And it's 12 questions to review a strategy with a deal. And then, obviously, each one of these 12 questions explodes into about 5 or 6 more. If you don't like the answer, you can drill down. Those are called Forecast 50 drill down questions. And so this process may only take 5 minutes. Nothing's changed. Stay on the course. Or it may take an hour, sometimes 2. But that comes out with a sales manager's confidence rating of high, medium, or low. I think the sales manager ought to say, we're going to commit, or this is upside, or this is pipeline, or this one's in trouble. Based on there's just too many variables for any computer or formula to calculate your forecast. Things change too fast in the crucible of politics, and just because you've done 70% of the activity doesn't mean you're 70% of the way to winning, because things get hot and heavy in the middle, right? There's some software that drives this stuff. Okay, click on. A couple pieces, shameless plug here. A couple pieces of software that can take that stakeholder analysis. We call it Radar. It draws a color-coded org chart, and it's got all your preference and power and information and pain. You can coach the deal exactly from one of these if you want to. And then you get a grid up here of stoplights that gets the manager's opinion on the deal before it goes up the forecast. So I'm the VP of Sales. I've got 6 deals I got to have by the end of the quarter. I can go down and I can drill all the way down if this is embedded into the CRM system, which it should be. It's plugged into the CRM system. Most CRM systems are not a sales process. They are a repository of information. They do not lead you through a process. So if you've got a plug-in, most of the vendors have one of these plug-ins for their process, then this will help come up with a plan in an efficient way. This has only got 3 tabs, and it does not take very long to fill out. But then we want the manager's opinion on a couple of things. Will we win? Will it close on time? Each part of your plan, do they have confidence in it? Look up there at the top. It has 2 pieces of data that are critical. It says, when was the next review, and when is the last review? And based on that, the VP of Sales can drill down into the radar and see for themselves whether they like the plan, because these are the deals we need to have to make our goals for the quarter. So if you're not doing this kind of analysis, you're just adding up bad numbers faster. Right? And the other thing is, those 2 dates up there tell you whether the coaching is going on at all or not, whether there's any discipline in your sales force, which managers are strategizing, and which ones are just letting it happen. In summary, if you're not winning, they won't tell you. And if you don't have somebody telling you you're winning, Probably not. Not all the buyers are equal. You can win without a strategy. It's called luck. And we don't pay six figures for luck. You can, if you just want to sell on luck, call Ariba. They're our client. They can put this thing on the web and buyers can buy and don't need any salespeople involved at all. And just let them evaluate and pick. But if you're paying hunters out there this kind of money and account managers, then they need to have a plan. That's how they add value to the sales cycle in today's market. So just remember this. I'll leave you with this parting comment. If you're not the lead sled dog, scenery never changes. All right? So I'm going to turn it back over to David. And thanks for your involvement.
Great stuff, Rick. Appreciate that. I'm sure everyone had a lot of value out of it. A couple of things before we close out. First, I want to give you some information about our upcoming webinar. The next webinar is going to be June 2nd. We'll be sending out the information on this, but you can also, as you see in the lower right-hand corner, just go to our website, click on News and Events, and go ahead and register for it. But Rick Page is going to have Peter Burke, one of our senior principals here at the Complex Sale, talking about his book and his approach to unselling, strategies to win without selling. I've read it, had good discussion with Peter, excellent stuff that Peter applies in his day-to-day efforts and helps his clients to implement along with our methodologies and strategies. So you don't want to miss that one. Go ahead and register now. Also, next week, as a matter of fact, in Atlanta, we're holding our Sales Management Academy. We talked a little bit about coaching today. Sales Management Academy is a tremendous program that focuses not just on deal coaching, but also on performance coaching, how to hire the star. So it's about developing sales leaders. For a lot of organizations that have realized we've promoted a bunch of good salespeople and we haven't equipped them in how to be sales coaches and sales leaders. It's a 2-day program. Starts with a dinner the evening of the 26th. We still have a few openings there. So again, you can go to our website and register, and that is going to be taught personally by Rick the next week in Atlanta. So with that, we're going to close and wrap up. We very much appreciate your attendance, and we look forward to seeing you again on June 2nd.